Okay, so hi Claire, welcome. Claire, well, I'll read your bio actually. Welcome to the first episode for the Dakini Academy. Claire is a grandmother, a wild nanny. She supports women to remember their power, pleasure, and potency of their bodies via the realms of birth and sexuality. Claire is an experienced home birth midwife, spinning babies approved trainer, and body worker. Claire has developed woundcraft bodywork combining craniosacral therapy, post-birth scar remediation, and somatic sexology. Claire is the founder of A Womb Rhythms, an online school offering trainings into the traditional art of birthcraft. And then you have some links and things like that, which I'll share underneath. So welcome. I'm also happy to say that Claire is a wonderful friend of mine and someone that I met you in a very similar place, actually, where you'd had 2 hours sleep in the kind of birth night shift fog. And I just felt the power and potency of, what you stand for with regards to female bodies and birth. And so welcome. I'd love for you to just introduce yourself and share anything that you'd like about who you are and where you are.
Thank you, Olivia. Right now my heart feels so soft and warm, and I'm so grateful to be here and really bowing deeply to what you're creating with the Dakini Academy, and feeling really honored to be invited to talk. And my hope or my prayer for this information is that whether you're in a body with a womb or a body with a penis, a woman's body or a man's body, or a body that you define by your own terms, is that, hopefully my words offer some steps on this pathway back to reclaiming the body as holy ground, as sacred space, reclaiming this flesh and blood as a space of church and temple, within all its fluids and its functions and its beauty and its pleasure and its cycles and its rhythms. So I'm really grateful to be here.
Yeah, thank you. And you're in New Zealand, we should say, which is where we met in many different weird and wonderful settings. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm in New Zealand, and right now I'm sitting in a birthing room in a little birthing house in a little small town that's about an hour and a half from the hospital. So that's where I'm coming from today.
Well, thank you for carving out time. And if the little alarm bell goes, that means that somebody's giving birth and you've got to go.
Yeah.
No,
that's a real life transition.
Yeah. Yeah. So as you know, we've spoken about it. What I would love to dive into today is how to support people, couples, beloveds, partners of any configuration with intimacy post-birth. So as we know, birth is a huge portal. There's preparations before, there's the immediate event and the immediate aftermath, and support and different things that might be needed afterwards. But that also goes on, and can go on for years at a time. And so I'd love you to speak into some of the emotional, spiritual, mental, physical ways that birth can impact connection and how to support intimacy after that.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm so happy to speak on this topic that's often a very silenced topic. It's often, I think, very common in a lot of couples' lives, particularly if they're parents, but often not spoken about. And it's very multifaceted. Partly it's these deep cultural undertones of what we consider to be a mother and this good mother, and the very clear separation that's happened throughout history of the eroticism and motherhood. There's often these two archetypes. You're either like a whore or a Madonna, a mother. And so there's a deeper sort of cultural, political interweaving that many women, particularly, or people with wombs, can find themselves on to draw those two together, depending on how they've grown up and the culture they've grown up in. Often for parents, whether that's parents with a new baby or parents with children, it can be a lack of, the physical lack of time or physical lack of energy because you're tired, Or sometimes there's the physicality of having children in the bed with you, which can bring up its own things around how do we be intimate around our children? Is there somewhere in the house? Is it okay? Is it not okay? Can I, be intimate with my partner? And then what if the baby wakes up to breastfeed? Is that okay? Is that not okay? How do we be sexual beings? Because we're all sexual beings because we are in bodies with children. Sometimes there's, that initiation into motherhood can be really rocky for some people, and there can be either physical trauma to the vagina, to the womb with cesarean and with scar tissue that can impact the physiology, or it can impact the psychology, because there's a lot of people now, both birth givers and their partners, who come through the birth feeling traumatized or raped through their birth experience. And then when they come to be intimate again, it can be a sense of, the fear of the pain. And if they rush into that, or if a partner is really like wanting to have sex and they're wanting, it often drives the other away. Or it can be that each time the vulva or the vagina is touched, it can stir the feelings of trauma or transgression or abuse that they felt like they experienced in the birth. And that can take a lot, to deep acknowledgement of partners to have to hold that space of presence. And a lot of fear for people who have given birth, if, knowing that if they deeply drop into feeling their anatomy, to linking their heart with their vulva, to linking their emotions with their vagina, there can be this numbness or hesitancy or avoidance that can happen because they don't want to feel what's there. And my experience of working with wombs and vaginas is they're these dark, beautiful caverns that hold stories. They hold stories of childhood, they hold ancestral stories, they hold collective stories. And we know that, right, from research, we know that fascia is that connective tissue which through everything, it's between the bladder and the bowel, it's between the bladder and the uterus, it's within the vaginal tissue itself. What we know from research is that fascia holds memory, not just memories of our life, but it holds ancestral memories, it holds collective memories. And I've been amazed actually when I work with bodies, and particularly when I work with the space of vulvas and the internal vaginal space, how interconnected that tissue is with our psyche, with our breath, with our heart. Like if someone were to massage my shoulder and they hold a point and I breathe, there might be some release, but my experience of holding with presence the internal delicate tissues of the vulva and vagina is that often with real presence and breath, the tissue physically changes, like it melts like butter under my fingertips.
And so soft as well. So I wonder if you can speak into the importance when you say, for example, a partner holding presence for something to reveal or move through or just be witnessed in the partner. What a skill actually and an art it is to not only hold the intuition and the sensing and feeling capacity of what's needed in the moment, but also the slowness to move towards, for example, a vulva or vagina, and how it can open, but only if it wants to. Otherwise, the contraction. Yeah.
And I find, when I work with women, like some women come to me and say, and these are people who are self-identifying as gendering themselves as women, so I'm going to use that word in that context. They'll say, I want some internal work. And what I find is there's these two queens. The first queen is the queen of the throat, and she stands like a guardian with like a staff, and she was like, fuck off. I will not I swore on your podcast. I will not let anyone in unless there's deep reverence. And she must be like the first queen to be met. And that's often through our communication, through eye contact, through how you've supported with the dishes that day.
Yeah.
And then the queen, there's a queen in every vagina. She stands at the gate. She, it's like dragon in the entrance of a cave. And even I find, you know, if the woman wants something, she wants internal work or she wants to have sex, the queen of the vagina will say, no, fuck off, unless there is deep reverence, unless someone is deeply bowing on their knees. And often what I see in women's bodies, when they override the queen, she's powerful, right? She'll make some thrush, she'll make some urinary tract infection, she'll make some vulvodynia pain. And she must be spoken to on the knees with reverence, which is so hard, you know, particularly if there's a man or a partner after the birth who their love language is sexual intimacy, or their love language is making love, and they feel a bit excluded because the baby's crying all the time, or they're in their own trauma of the birth or their own childhood stuff about being a baby, and maybe you haven't made love for 6 months, and that's like not uncommon, right? Maybe you haven't made love for a year. Maybe you're so horny and so desperate, you know, you just want to go fast. And then the queen will be like, fuck no. So it can set up this chasing and aversion of I am so desperate to make love, and there's so much sort of speed and desire and wanting in that, and then the woman's body can be like a little crab. So sometimes a man needs to self-pleasure and before he's even able to come into connection, because even if it's a cuddle, if there's a desperate heat and a desperate fire and a desperate longing in his body, that will be enough for some women's bodies to contract, for some queen of the vagina to say no. And for some couples it can be almost like, well, there's a few things. One, it's, I think, am I talking too much? Shall we take a breath?
No.
Okay.
Well, we can take a breath, but I don't think you're talking too much. I feel like you speak the gospel, so I'm always sat here like,
oh, the gospel according to vagina.
Vaginal queen gospel.
yeah. I think it's important to acknowledge, like after birth, that you are again virginal. You are a new person. You know, often after birth, I have felt, and I've seen it in other women, that I felt like I got exploded to the universe, that the pieces of what I thought were me were disseminated out into wild space. And then it took a while for that to recombobulate itself. And so going into before birth with the awareness that after birth you will not be the same person. And with that, you have to, as the couple, meet yourselves anew and meet yourselves as virginal. How can you think of yourself whenever you lost your virginity, you know, as a 15-year-old or an 18-year-old or a 20-year-old, almost starting that lovemaking process as having a bit of a plan of, and obviously it's going to take at least 6 weeks, at least 2 months for the bleeding to stop, for the scar to heal if there's any cesarean or vaginal scar tissue. And then making a bit of a plan. It's like first you court and you have eye contact or kind words, and then you might do gentle touch. Then you might do some eye gazing. Then you might do some hugging. Then you might do some genital touch. Then you might do some genital kissing. And then you might just put genitals together with even out penetration. And this might be weeks and weeks or months. It might not. Like, you know, from my experience, I had my first baby and it was like a volcano was moving through my body. And I was so horny afterwards. I was so shocked. And it was a bit alarming also, because I was sort of trying to marry this, I'm a mother, but I'm like really horny, and how do I marry that? So it's not like that for everyone, but more often than not, slowness and going slower than you ever could anticipate you need to go is one of the main keys to work with.
Yeah, totally. And what it sounds to me like is just this importance of both people in the couple really honoring where they're at so holding themselves and holding their capacity, whether it's the female body who's the queen of the throat might be saying, yes, darling, of course I want to make love with you, or feeling some pressure to fit back into who they were before. But if the both queens aren't talking to each other, that can be a problem. And then I suppose for the other partner, male or female or whoever, having a grounded self-connection to know what's happening on the external is not about me, the love hasn't been taken away, how can I fill my own cup, fill my own needs? Because I suppose I don't have children, but I know you have 3, and you also live with your many grandchildren and all the different people in your house. I suppose there's a huge question for parents and caregivers about, how do I nourish myself? So when I come to the table with my partner, I'm not trying to take from each other, and meeting from a place of wholeness as much as is possible.
Yeah, so important. And I would suggest a couple of things. I would suggest one is that, I mean, often when people have children, they start to prioritize the children, and the relationship goes 3rd or 4th or 18th on the list. But actually, something that I found with my partner of 25 years is that we purposely carve out time in our diary every week. Wednesdays are for fucking.
I remember you telling me this once. Yeah. Between 9 and 2, it's fucking time.
Yeah. Because sometimes you just don't get the time, and it might not be, if you've got a 6-week-old or a 6-month-old or a 1-year-old or a 3-year-old, it might not be you get a Wednesday, but it's really prioritizing quality time, which might be 10 minutes every evening. Like, I know there's been some research on when couples who, when they meet together, when they arrive home or when they leave the house, when they have some physical connection, a hug longer than 20 seconds or a kiss, they tend to have stay together longer. So really prioritizing the relationship as a living being and showing up for that, showing up for the commitment of it, even when you don't want to, all you want to do is scroll your phone and watch Netflix. Like, showing up for, okay, the kids are in bed, it's 8 o'clock, from 8 till 8:30 or 8 to 8:15, this is us. And it doesn't mean penis in vagina, right? It means
great, 15 minutes straight in there.
That the queen of the vagina might say, like, great, or she'll probably say, fuck no. When it's 15 minutes, it's like, just sharing about your day, or is it sharing about what touched you today, or sharing about what's happening in your body, or or doing like a 3-minute game with Betty Martin, like, what would you like to do to me, or what would you like me to do to you, for 3 minutes, which might be absolutely non-genital. It might be, okay, can you just like really gently stroke my brow, or could you brush my hair, or could you tell me how beautiful I look? And I think sometimes people think, or couples think, particularly if penetrative sex, P&V, penis in vagina sex, is off the table, they're like, oh, we've got no sex life. But actually what it does is open this incredible creative opportunity of, how else do we explore pleasure? Like, what other places of my body can I explore pleasure? Could it be that, you are, the man might be like so horny. Could it be that, it's, what it offers is an opportunity for amazing communication. It's like, I'm really horny, I really don't want it, how can we work with this? And it could be like, I'm willing to watch you self-pleasure and give you loving feedback on what I see. And I was like, wow, that's a kink, that's a bit of a edge for me. Or it could be, I'm willing to watch your self-pleasure in the shower. I'm willing to lay here naked and let you admire me. Or, like, I think it's, and this is something in a long-term relationship that we have had to learn. Absolutely, our sex life goes through ebbs and flows. Sometimes it's super juicy, sometimes it's been spider webs. you know, cobwebs and having that commitment. You know, some of the things I've found for a good sex life is commitment, is showing up, is keeping showing up, to learning, keeping showing up to communication, keeping showing up to meet our edge.
Yeah.
And we have the most juicy, beautiful, nourishing sexual connection that continues to grow and transform and get deeper and deeper and deeper, even though we've known each other's bodies intimately for over 25 years.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. Something I've always admired about you is I feel you to be someone who's very sensual. So, you know, you love to dance and really like get into the wildness of your body. And oh, you've just frozen a little bit. Oh no, you're back.
Oh, we are back.
Yeah, maybe that's a conversation for another time, which is about how much I love what you call forth in women when they're birthing, which is like the raw primal wildness, and how to just get out of the way and let the real animal instinct come through. But I feel you hold this beautiful transmission of that in the everyday. And so for people who maybe that, you know, they've received the standard couples of advice, which is, oh, things are a little bit dry, have a date night. And then all the focus and pressure is on getting dolled up, going out for dinner, and then you come home, you feel really full and you don't really want to have sex. And it feels like a flop. But actually what I remember watching a video on Instagram of you once, like doing the Harry Met Sally orgasm about like pasta or something. And I just love the creativity and the possibility of opening up that between couples and in relationships, which is like, how do we just rip up what we think intimacy and sex is and really re-meet sensuality and slowness and softness in all the different ways it can be, whether it's like just lying naked outside together with wind on your skin, or could be anything, but really removing the frameworks of how we think we must relate, to let the animal body just enjoy itself and be in pleasure. Yeah, I love that about you. So I wonder if you have any kind of insights on that.
I feel so touched that you say that. Yeah, I mean, it's so exciting, right? It offers such an opportunity. I think when we just think about pleasure as penis in vagina, it's like, for me, that's like 1 out of 10.
Yeah.
You know, like my whole world can be erotic. I've had orgasms. Like, I was in Melbourne once and I was walking down the street. I was at a traffic light and there was this cool breeze and I sort of needed to pee. And I just held my legs a certain way. I was like, so orgasm there. Or, you know, I've been like going in the supermarket and it's like the near the cold fridge with the yogurt, and there was like a cool breeze. I was like, whoo. Yeah. So, you know, when there's not penetrative sex as like first and foremost, and if you're working with someone else's body, I mean, there's a couple of things. One is often we're led to believe that I assume you know how to please me and you assume I know how to please you. Yeah. Whereas I might not even know what pleasure is myself. And so if penetrative sex is off the table, what it opens is this whole other realm of creativity of what is pleasure, what feels like pleasure in your body, creative ways to be with pleasure, creative ways to be erotic and intimate. And you know, like you're saying, like pleasure can be the sun on your skin, pleasure can be how your clothes feel on your body, pleasure can be the smell of something beautiful, pleasure can be putting your head on your pillow on your fresh sheets. So starting to consider not how do I put a penis in vagina, but how does my body move through the world in pleasure. And and what is foreplay? Like for my partner and I, some of the things we'll do, because we've got like kids around us all the time, you know, some of the ways we'll do it is like after a shower, if I see him get out of the shower and we are chatting about our day, I'll often go and dry him. And or if we're in the kitchen, you know, sometimes, hey?
Such a sweet act, you know, such a simple, like caring, loving act. Or maybe it's hot, I don't know, but it feels quite sweet and tender to me.
Yeah, it's tender, I think. Could be hot, depends on how I dry him, what I used to dry him. And of course, if you're tired and you've got kids all over you, and you know, also there's a breastfeeding hormones that have a shift. Other things we'll do is like, you know, if we're in the kitchen, we might just come and nuzzle in each other's ear or smell each other, or I might grab his belt around his waist and pull it towards me, or, you know, looking at those love languages. Is it acts of service? Is it kind words? Is it quality time? Is it presence? Is it gifts? How are we doing that in micro movements throughout the day?
Yeah, totally. I read a study once about, I can't remember the specifics, but it was broadly people who are consistently thanking their partner and noticing, you know, the shirt that's left off the laundry basket, or, you know, all these little things that kind of don't feel like much, but actually they build up and drive someone crazy. People who can communicate about these little things and kind of build capacity and resilience to be with it, and also just understand each other and serve what each other needs. That's all foreplay. So that when it then gets to Saturday night and you've had a sexy dinner or whatever, and one of you was into it on a Tuesday, but now you're not on a Saturday, it doesn't make much sense. Like, how to kind of zoom out and see the wider framework of the relationship and the kind of patchwork of all these little moments that build the picture of intimacy that's not just about specific acts or celebrations or birthdays or whatever it may be.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, doing the dishes is sexy as fuck, right? Like mopping the floor, helping me with the washing. It's yeah, all of that stuff. And acknowledging too, you know, to follow on what you said, like if you just think that on a Saturday night, that's when you're going to get it on. But actually for some, when you're parents, it's exhausting. You know, when you're not getting much sleep, bodies respond different in exhaustion, or it's like, how do you make love in deep exhaustion? How much do you need to slow it down or become subtle or become simple? And I think, you know, in body, or my experiences, when my body feels pleasure, it wants more pleasure. When my body feels pressure, it scuttles away from pleasure. So exploring those moments, you know, looking at opportunities when, you know, is it that the kids are sleeping in the day that you might be able to connect? Is it that you've got, you know, the kids are sleeping in the morning when you might connect? Is it that you've got a babysitter? Is it that in the evenings, if you're making love, it's just some erotic words, or you're listening to an erotic story on an audio book as you're going to sleep? Like, how can it be so simple and how can it be so easy? But the most erotic thing, I wonder, is around opening up the dialogue of what do you desire, and how would that look for you, and what feels good in your body, or what would you like to do to me, as I said, and what would you like me to do to you? That can be so erotic.
And what about the kind of more longer term things that can come up post birth? Because what I've found in many clients that I've worked with is their female partner is maybe more heading towards menopause, and something shifted where the eroticism is kind of off the table, and hormonal changes are impacting the woman, or there might even be something happening in the pelvic area which could be unaddressed from birth, but you know, the partner's not sure, or I wasn't shared that information. But what it has felt to me after working with so many people with such similar themes coming up is this challenge in communicating where we do and don't feel met, what's happening in each other's bodies, and how to meet from that place. And maybe some might not draw the strings between what's manifesting in the pelvis 10 years after the birth and what might have happened at the time.
Yeah, thank you. I'm going to sort of answer broadly and then come more specific. I think, you know, if being in a woman's body myself and working with what women's bodies is, noticing there's always rhythms and cycles and ebbs and flows. Even if someone's menstruating, there's a summer, a winter, a spring. You know, in ovulation, you can be horny as, and or with your period, or before your period, not want it at all. So to acknowledge that generally women's bodies anyways aren't always in 10 out of 10 want to fuck, that they need different things at different times. And of course, after birth, you have that hormonal changes that, you know, in your brain, you've got these receptors in your body, and these receptors, they'll either accept estrogen, which is like a pretty sexy hormone. You want to put your short skirt on and like slut about, or they'll accept prolactin, and prolactin is prolactation. It helps you breastfeed, right? And prolactin is more a hormone that where you're sitting on the couch in your tracky dacks, you got some speedy stains on your shirt, you don't really want to go on the hunt. And the receptors will only accept generally one estrogen or prolactin at once. And when you're breastfeeding, of course, you need prolactin to sustain your baby. So there can be this difference in sexuality of how you might have thought of yourself as a sexual being. It's exploring it in a different way, in that really full, ripe, milky breasts. Maybe your belly is softer, maybe it's slower. And of course, the breastfeeding hormones make the vagina generally more dry. So you have to use way more lubrication. You might need to use way more foreplay. And part of lubrication comes when there's a lot of blood flow in the vagina. When you feel aroused, the tissue gets engorged with blood. When it gets engorged with blood, it pushes the fluid out of the tissue, and that's part of how we get it wet. Part of it's our cervix and cervical mucus, part of it's the glands, part of it's the tissue itself, and that can only happen with good blood flow and after good arousal. And usually, statistically, it takes most women's bodies about 40 minutes for the clitoral tissue to become erect and engorged, for the vulva to become engorged, for lubrication to start happening. If there's scar tissue in the vulva or in the vagina, that can cause a number of things. One, it could cause pain or sort of psychological, emotional trauma. One, the other is that if there's scar tissue there, it's like a dense fabric or a dense net, which impacts blood flow, which can then impact lubrication. And scar tissue can impact, sometimes some women after birth feel their vagina hole is tighter, or there's an area of numbness. Sometimes nerves can become more exposed, so they might need lots of touch to settle, or lots of touch to reinvigorate nerves. Sometimes if a woman has had an episiotomy in the birth, and an episiotomy is where, I've got my little vulva puppet here, where a medical professional, it should only be done in rare circumstances, but actually, unfortunately, it's done a lot. A medical professional will cut with scissors the muscle of the vagina to at the lower side of the vagina to one side. Often I see it on the right. With an episiotomy, it's not uncommon that one of the clitoral legs can be cut, and that can take up to 4 years for those nerves to reinnovate to meet each other again. Also, if you have scar tissue from a cesarean, this can impact, this is my womb here. You have these big round ligaments. These are the white things, and the purple bit's the cervix. And when we get aroused in lovemaking, whether we've had a baby or not had a baby, these round ligaments come down into our vulva. And when we're aroused, the vulva gets engorged with blood. And when it gets engorged with blood, these round ligaments contract forward, which pulls the uterus forward, which lifts the cervix up in the vaginal canal. So it makes the vaginal canal longer. So if you're having penetrative sex, or if you're putting something in your vagina like a penis, the vaginal canal gets longer so there's more room for the penis. So if you're having penis in vagina sex and you're not fully aroused, the penis can bang on the cervix, which can cause pain. And then, of course, if you've got pain, then you have more tension, then you're not going to feel much pleasure, and you might not want to have sex the next time. But what can happen for cesarean births is the scar tissue of the cesarean in the lower belly can become sticky around the round ligaments. So the vulva might become engorged with blood, and when these round ligaments try to contract forward, they have limited mobility. So instead of the cervix lifting up, it stays down. So sometimes after a cesarean, people might experience painful lovemaking if they're doing heterosexual sex with a penis in a vagina. And it could be painful because the penis might bang the cervix, or it can be painful because the cesarean scar tissue can limit the mobility of the womb or the bladder, which has an impact on those softer vaginal tissues. And then coming into perimenopause, of course, the hormones change again, your estrogen drops. So, and my experience of perimenopause is just like, I'm so done over giving, and I'm so done caring. And I was talking to another woman who's in menopause. The queen at the gate of my vagina becomes even more fierce. It's like, you approach me with absolute presence or you fuck off. It becomes, and that's even like sometimes like I want to have sex, right? And my body will say no. So if there's that there's a couple of things there. That ongoing scar tissue can have impacts on women's bodies into their 90s. I've worked with a woman she was 67, working with scar tissue and having an impact and it being still able to have a release. With perimenopause and menopause, also the hormones can make the tissues more dry, which is sort of anatomically something that happens, but something I don't really believe in, because with deep respect, deep touch, with being super juicy, with finding pleasure in the body, with not being hormonally dominant. And this is something I've been practicing the last few years because I'm aging, I'm coming into perimenopause, not relying on my estrogen or my ovulation cycles to get me horny, using other ways of using breath, of cultivating a practice of pleasure, of cultivating a practice of turn on, so I'm not reliant on my hormonal turn on, which happens, post-birth, which happens in menopause, which happens at different times in my cycle. Also, I've practiced for me, a practice of questioning myself. And this is very common for me. I'm not often very horny. I have a lot of eros that moves through my body. I have a lot of pleasure, but I'm not often horny. And often I don't feel like sex, or I could take it or leave it because I don't sleep much, right? Because I work too much. Often it's like, I would rather watch Netflix, so I would rather sleep. But I ask myself often, I might not be wanting, but am I willing? And that's not overriding myself. That's like, I don't want to have sex, but I'm willing to explore if you give it a go. And then usually, we have incredible lovemaking, but it's rare that I am wanting to make love. Or no, that's not true. Often I do, but often I don't. But I think that's an important thing to consider, for post-birth bodies, if they're just like always like no, actually, what are you willing to do? And you might not be wanting, but you might not be willing. Are you willing to look at your partner's naked body and comment on what's beautiful to you? Are you willing to watch porn alongside them? Depends if it's I don't like porn myself. And that's a thing that can happen to you when a male partner comes into that. If it's after the birth and they're watching a lot of porn and self-pleasuring, sometimes then they need to come out of those habits of those quick dopamine fixes. And together there's an opportunity to find that slowing down and breath and pleasure in other parts of the body.
Totally. Porn and what can happen when the habit gets calcified, and the addiction to dopamine and the rush and all the different impacts that can come from porn addiction is one of the biggest challenges, hands down, in all the people that I've worked with. It's one of the most common themes. It's from actually more on the young end of men, but still throughout many men I've worked with. And this sensation of like reaching and striving and trying to get somewhere fast, and it's very hard, not impossible by any means, but it's hard to really slow down away from that. And I can imagine coming into contact with a partner when there's a very strong porn addiction is challenging. Coming into contact with a partner who's like incredibly hormonal and breastfeeding or post-birth or pregnant, or whatever is needed to really have a deeper attunement and listening, there can be challenges in the meeting. And I guess to support people, if people are watching this and thinking, well, that's me, but what do I do about it? What would you recommend?
Yeah, it's complex, isn't it? I would wonder, the first step is, what am I willing to do? Because one can't override the body. If you're thinking, I should do this, but you don't really want to do it. What are you willing to do? What do you want? What do you want for yourself? And from that place of what do you want for yourself, what would be your first micro movement to move towards that? Would it be, and that will be different for everyone, I think. Like you could talk about starting to use your breath. You could talk about starting to notice where in your body through your daily life is pleasure. You could talk about, is it, if I'm watching porn every day, could I start to watch it every second day? Is it that I'm watching this type of porn, could I watch a different type of porn? Is it, even it could be a simple thing like, is it if I'm always wanking, or if I'm always self-pleasuring or masturbating with one hand, could I try the other hand? If I'm always masturbating or wanking sitting down, or in one room, or in my chair in front of the computer, could I try it in the shower? Or could I try it standing up? Or could I try it laying down? It's like even just changing it up a bit. What are the micro movements? Because often, I don't know, something I've noticed in my bodies like repetition and they like habit. And when they're in patterns, particularly if it's been a long-term pattern, which porn can be for a lot of people from 13 years old or 14 years old, having that real deep compassion and patience, absolutely so much patience that it probably won't be a quick fix. So first, what can satiate your psyche's need for a quick fix? Because if you've been doing something from when you're 14 to 24 or 14 to 34, where is the willingness to be creative, to explore something different? And where is the willingness to be committed to yourself, to keep exploring, even if there's numbness or frustration, or if you notice that you don't get an erection, or if you're a woman, you're not getting lubricated, or you're not having pleasure, where is the delicate self-kindness? Stay with it. What are the small gifts you could offer yourself along the way? How can you just transfer your dopamine from one to another? Like, if you're wanking every night and you're like, okay, I want to shift this, or using a vibrator, even if you're in a woman's body, it's like, okay, I'm going to explore slowing it down. Okay, I'm numb, I'm not having as much pleasure. What could I offer myself then as another form of pleasure? It might be okay, I'm not going to use my vibrator. I'm not going to watch porn tonight. I'm going to give myself 10 minutes so I don't get too frustrated, to use my breath, to slow down. Okay, if I'm numb, what's the gift on the other side of that? Is it that I offer myself a bath or a walk, or I wrap myself in something beautiful? I have a really ripe, juicy peach. So there's still, you know, a gift, a reward at the end of it. And maybe the reward is on your dopamine list that you've just been able to tick something off.
I know that one. I like a list.
Yeah, I like.
So I'm just conscious of time because I know that you've got different bodies and things to attend to. But what I'm hearing from all of this really is the importance of just micro practices or micro decisions. So in the day-to-day, 5 minutes here, 5 minutes there, of cultivating and weaving habits which can expand our capacity to feel more, be with more sensation, be in deeper intimacy. And yeah, I feel like sometimes there can be this idea that we need these big bang peak experiences with a partner, and although they can be really beautiful to kind of touch something and give a reference point for something, what's also really helpful, what I'm hearing, is just the slowness in the day-to-day of cultivating really deep intimacy. So yeah, brushing each other's
Yeah, no, yeah. And within that, I think, like, it's like we only use a certain part of our brains, or, from Betty Martin's work, this idea of waking up the hands, that, and then this beautiful opportunity it is, how can I wake up the senses in my body? What more is my body capable of? And particularly, like, I love this with food. So that meal you were talking about, my partner and I, we're both pretty sensuous, and we go out for meals and we feed each other, like, with our finger, like the waitress won't come near us. Yeah. And it's like, how could this feel even better? Like, sorry if you're vegan or vegetarian, but like, the other day we shared some salmon. He cooked me some salmon before I went to work, and we were like, oh my God, this is like sex. It's so crispy and salty. And how could this body become more of a enjoyable space to be? And for me, that's even like, I have a lot of sheepskins, or sorry if you're vegan again, soft fabrics and sheepskins in the house, or having a shower, or the feeling of my hot feet on cool tiles, or the way my hair falls around my face. It's like, or what smells good. Awakening the senses, I think, is a really easy place to start, because even if you're breastfeeding or you've got new babies in the house, you could talk together about what do I love? What would awaken my senses? Would it be a smell? Would it be touch? Would it be beautiful music that I can hear? Would it be something I'm tasting? Like, a really beautiful game you can play is small pieces of food cut up really finely with eyes closed that you feed to each other. And I played this with my friends recently, and we put it up next level, where I put a small amount on each breast, and they had to come and taste it off. Yeah, and it was like little bits of ginger, or little bits of chocolate, or little bits of salty chili, or how do we awaken the senses in a really playful way, like, totally, the innocence. Yeah,
that's beautiful. I often find myself at the washing line, like, sniffing my partner's sarong, like it's like fabric sarong, and I'm always like a creep in the corner, like, because I just love the smell of it so much. It's like sweaty and musty, and
yeah, same. When my partner gets home from work, I'm like, a nose in his underarms. I'm very animal.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I love that about you. Cool. Well, it feels like we're coming to a natural end. So, I've got, that's not my name. That's my partner's name. I'm on his Zoom account. So anyway, thank you so much for your time and for sharing with me and whoever's watching this, and for your honesty. And I just love the way you blend the mystical and the practical and the wild and the sensual and the animalistic and then the anatomical, you know, like the capacity to weave in both worlds is really beautiful, and I feel profoundly helpful for people to hear this information. So yeah, I've worked with many clients who I really hope that they can access this kind of information, because it can be very supportive just to have an outside perspective on what could be happening.
Yeah, thank you. I really feel so touched by your appreciation, and so grateful for the opportunity to talk and for it to be appreciated. And if people want to reach out, I do face-to-face sessions and also Zoom sessions. And tenderness of each other, and the tenderness of couples, the tenderness of new fathers. Maybe just the last thing it feels important to speak to for some reason, that, you know, for sometimes new fathers, even to come into sexuality can be feelings of hopelessness or powerlessness or fear, or their experience of trauma of what happened in the birth and what they didn't do or didn't say, or you know, it's such a tender place for everybody. Thank you. I'm so celebrating you and so appreciating your work, and so grateful for what you're doing in the world.
Thank you so much. And I'll add all the links so people can find you and all that underneath. Yeah, thank you so much, and good luck with any possible births that are happening this evening.
Thank you.
Sending you much love. Ciao.
Thank you, my love.